thanks everyone for coming in today. This panel is Big Data and Security Challenges from the CIO Viewpoint. I'm Darren Murph. I'm the Global EIC at TechRadar. I've spent 10 years on the reporting side and in the PR side, and I'm happy to be joined by Neil Jarvis, Yanak, and Philippe Rosiere. So hopefully we'll have a good, lively discussion, and we're going to try to save some time for questions at the end if anything comes up. So I want to start with one. We were talking earlier, and Neil mentioned big data. That was on the list. And as soon as I saw it, I smiled a bit, because as a reporter, over the past 10 years, there aren't too many buzzwords that have buzzed as much as big data. And to be sincere, it's one of the tougher terms to distill down to an audience, not just of consumers that like technology, but even business people that have to deal in technology day to day. So I'm curious to get separate viewpoints on where do you see big data going? What does it mean to you? And how is it going to change in terms of perception? Because if you would have asked me what was large, what was big 10, 20 years ago, it'd be vastly different. And I think it will be in the years ahead. So curious for your take on that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to be a little controversial around big data. I think the big data title is almost been overused. I'm starting to think the industry is a little tired with big data, and from a CIO perspective, if you actually look at data, it's actually small bits and bytes. Data's always been small bits and bytes. Data is only big when it becomes information, and the algorithms that are needed to create the information is to me the most important thing. We all remember the days of data lakes and big data warehouses, and how we all used to see that great picture of the iceberg in the lake, and some of the data you can't get at. I actually attest that today that data is running so hard and so fast that it's like a raging river. It's no longer a data lake or a data warehouse. It's truly the algorithms and the speed that you've actually got to move in and out of that raging river to grab the data. And then as a CIO, when we actually talk to the business, it's how you take that data, build it into information that's business relevant. So I'd rather actually sit down and talk about today the relevance, the business relevance of data, and how we can actually provide that for clients, how we can actually sit down and use it in the most sensible way. At Fujitsu, we've got the supercomputer. We were the leaders in the supercomputer market, and will be again very shortly. So we've got the fastest computers in the world, which is great. But you've got to have that algorithm that's going to fly in and out, and then what's that algorithm mean? What is it that the business really want us to give them? What's the data that they want to gather? And is that secure? And we'll talk more, I suspect, about security of data, but I suggest now's the time in the marketplace that we start changing the term big data, and we start moving on to business relevant information.
Yep. Gentlemen, anything to add on?
You said it very well. I think the whole point about big data is the monetization. What good is the data if you don't condense it to something that's meaningful to the organization? And that's the challenge for the CIO, to make sure that what is the business needs and matching those business needs. So data is worthless unless you can extract information from it that's actionable. I think that's what you were saying. Yeah. Is that right? Big to you.
So I'm gonna go to another. You said overused term, so now I have permission to use that. But as a reporter, I think cloud is pretty high up there as well, and especially on the consumer side, cloud trickled down pretty quickly. Things like Google Drive and OneDrive, all of a sudden, even consumers had access to vast repositories of data. I'm curious on, what does the cloud mean to you? How are you approaching that differently? How is it impacting businesses now, and how is it going to impact strategy in the years ahead?
So I think cloud is clearly, as we saw in the opening keynote speech today by Dr. Rieger, it's the digitalization of everything is absolutely critical. you know, I look at, as a CIO, you know, what does the cloud mean and how do we use it? And it's the ability to de-risk for me and actually put things into a secure environment where the access of that information is easy and simple. If I look at the Fujitsu strategy, our K5 cloud is an open stack model. In fact, we've got the largest open stack model in the world. You know, and that's incredible in itself. But then when you actually take MetaArch, which is the platform then for driving in and out of that cloud environment, that's when you really start to bring the business into the picture and it really become truly relevant to them as to how you actually extrapolate that information from there. So I think there's, you know, the world has happened. We're in cloud. There is no, I thought it was great when Dr. Riga said, you know, there is no choice. We're all there. It's all around us and it's part of it. I think our strategy for our K5 cloud and our MetaArch solution at Fujitsu is going to lead the market. And I think it leads the market based on what our customers are telling us. And for a CIO, of course, I've got customers. I like to think that I've got the toughest customers because everybody in a technology company is the biggest technology expert there is. So you're actually trying to tell technologists what technology is, and it's a tough ride, and it's a great opportunity to work with them. So I think the cloud is where we're going. It's going to get faster. It's going to get easier. And I think Fujitsu right now, and I'm fortunate being the CIO at Fujitsu that I get to use it first and often that we can actually drive that learning.
Do you gentlemen have any examples of how that's impacted your business or how it's impacting business strategy?
Certainly when we do IT security strategy for customers, most of the time the choice of moving to the cloud is business driven, okay? And simply because the business want to mitigate their risk. And sometimes IT is not in a position to provide safe environments, so the business made a conscious decision to move to the cloud.
So talking about Dr. Rosiere's keynote this morning, one thing that I keyed in on was the disruption that's happening with the digitalization of pretty much everything, and that the fact that it's inevitable, so we're sort of wasting time talking about how is it going to change things. It's more like it's going to happen. How are we going to get ready for that? So I'm interested in to hear from you guys on what are clients saying to you? What problems are they seeing, or what disruptions are they seeing that they say, look, we need help on this, or we need some insight on?
Well, just 2 weeks ago, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal from Wells Fargo Bank, and their prediction was that passwords are going to be passé in 5 years. I've heard that prediction now for 15 years, by the way, but they're saying that. So I guess the disruption that I'd like to talk about would be biometrics and how that can, and Fujitsu's biometrics specifically, are changing and disrupting how things are done today. Every CIO is responsible for maintaining, storing, and securing that information. Data is worthless. Information is valuable. That information is your value. Anybody who can get access to that data, you've got to know who it is and make sure he's got the right access to. A password, a RSA token are not necessarily the most secure ways to go. So one of the disruptions that's going to happen, and it's happened because of a significant tipping point a few years ago, was this little company called Apple. Up until Apple introduced the iPhone with a fingerprint reader, the perception of biometrics was it's a cop thing. You know, I'm not a criminal. Why are you taking my biometric? Why take my fingerprint? But subsequent to Apple releasing that product, the consumers now understand the value, the convenience value of this thing called a biometric. The organizations have known about this value for many, many years. Fujitsu has been working on it for very many years in multiple different modes. And as a result of this, the tipping point's now. Consumers understand it. The cost factor is driven way down. The benefit's always been there, securing your enterprise. High-level security, high-level convenience, very disruptive technology. It's going to change the way access is being done to any database.
I think a few years ago we have already installed, I think it was in Brazil, ATM machines with palm vein technology, which is to some extent a type of biometry. Okay? And health sector. Currently, we are doing a pilot in Canada with a hospital over there using palm vein technology for self-identification of customers, of patients over there. Because certainly the information need to be protected. You know, all the medical files can't be released like that. So it's very important to identify the patient without any mistake. So it's not only in banking, it's across all industries.
Yeah, it truly is an interesting subject, and you know, when you start talking about the true sort of fingerprint technologies, I saw just this last week that there's a new tool that you can buy that you put on the back of your phone, and you walk up as somebody, you follow somebody as they type in their number at the checkout, and it actually reads the heat of the fingerprints of the person that just went in front of you. So you've basically got their fingerprint. So it doesn't matter what the technology is. There's always a bad actor that's trying to get ahead of it, and it's that's part of our industry, and that's what we have to work on. And again, you know, I don't want to keep harping back to Dr. Rieger, but when you look at you know, where the world's going and what we have to look at, you know, you've got to stay way ahead of this space, and that's our challenge, and that's what we need to be working with our clients on, because the protection of that information, not data, but the information is absolutely critical for us all. So.
Yeah, speaking about cybersecurity, it's been a massive topic in the mainstream and, of course, behind the scenes in businesses. And I've personally wondered at times how much of this is just fear-mongering or just driven by maybe a sensationalist fear. But you mentioned things like that can have real impact. And we heard this morning there's two types of corporations, the ones that have been hacked and the ones that don't know it yet. That's probably a bit extreme, but maybe there's some truth to that. So I'm curious, how real is that, and what are some of the steps you're taking to stay one step ahead of it?
Yeah, it's in my mind, it's absolutely real. But security is not new. You know, security has always been the challenge of any IT organization, you know, going all the way back. I think we've done a fantastic job of tracking the intrusions coming from the outside. I think the big risk that we're all starting to face is the internal intrusion as well. You know, so we work really, really hard at the external intrusion, and there's not a lot of companies that are really changing the geopolitical or the economical you know, events of the world through hacking. You know, you may lose your identity, and it's real interesting. The CIO, CTO of the IRS here in the US, so that's our Inland Revenue Service, is a good friend of mine, and this year my social security number was hacked, so I didn't get my tax refund because of his poor systems. So he and I had that conversation, but it really is interesting that you cannot stop it's exactly as it was stated this morning. They're going to get in. It's how quickly you can detect it. But now we've also got to detect it from inside. Because if the bad actors of the world really want to change the geopolitical or the geo-economical value of the world, you know, and create that seventh, eighth dimension of warfare, then you for businesses, then you've really got to cover the inside as well, and it's that really is a tough market, and Fujitsu are working real hard on that as well as the external. But they're the conversations that we need to have with clients as well.
So Philippe, I wanted to ask you specifically, how do you align the IT security strategy with the business strategy? And those two can operate in silos sometimes. They might not think there's a lot of overlap there, but yeah. According to what I'm hearing, they have to work together and there have to be alignment there.
Absolutely. But let just me give a bit of more information of what Neil just said. You know, a few years ago, I was running a workshop with clients in Australia, and told them, listen, statistically speaking, 2% of the population is dishonest. Okay? So currently, people within your organization are ripping you off. Okay? So that's why it's very important as well to consider the inside security. We are talking about tax office and banking. In a previous life, I was CIO in a bank in Luxembourg. And a German bank had a major problem with a consultant. Okay? Luxembourg was very well known at that time for banking secrecy. So you could open an account under a false name, and so there was a lot of dodgy business. And that consultant got access to that special client files. Went back to Germany because he was German, starting to blackmail the bank. Okay? And the bank, what they did is to report that to the police in Germany. The police in Germany got the file back, but didn't give it back to the bank. They gave it to the tax office in Germany. So because there was a lot of German clients, so it was quite an interesting problem. Now, coming back to how do you align IT security strategy and business strategy? You know, I think it was Peter Drucker who said there is nothing so useless to do well things that shouldn't be done at all. Okay? And Dr. Rieger this morning was talking about that digital transformation is it's not an IT affair, it's a business affair. IT security is a business affair. Okay? So it's very important to understand that. And the best way to ensure the alignment between IT security strategy and a business strategy is to start with the business drivers. Okay? To start with the business drivers and to understand what are the business objectives that are important to the organization. So it means that the organization has to be very clear, very clear on what are the drivers for value, what are the drivers for stakeholder values within the organization. And from there, you know, the classic approach to define your current state, future state, and how to bridge the gap and so on. Very often organizations, unfortunately, they start by defining their current state, their current security posture. Big mistake on my view. It's better to start with a future state. Because when you start with a future state, first you are not influenced, you are not tainted by your current security posture. And more importantly, when you start with a future state, you need to be able to relate to something, and that something are the business objectives. So if you don't start with the business objectives, you will miss the boat. You will have a fantastic IT strategy, IT security strategy. You will have fantastic policies to protect data, but maybe you will protect the wrong data, okay, because the value of data is different. You know, some data is highly confidential and some can be made public. So very important when you do an IT security strategy is to start from the business objectives.
But I mean, how do you see biometrics playing into that? As a reporter, I've seen all sorts of things tried, even from an enterprise standpoint, from iris scanning everyone that walks in to biometrics to a combination of the two. What's next for that area?
I think you said it very well. So it comes down to not where you are today, because every CIO here knows that where you are today from a security perspective is not a good place, let's be honest. So security is a three-legged stool. And if you have a three-legged stool and one of those three legs falls, the stool's gone. The three legs are identifying the person at the beginning of the transaction, then the transmission of that information to the database, and then the database storage itself. If any one of those legs falls apart in your IT strategy, you're being compromised. So where biometrics fall specifically, the first piece is identifying that person. And if you've got an organization where 2% of your staff may be not the nicest people, if you want to call it that, then what 2% are they? Your technology that you deployed today to identify all the staff is a password. Now, granted, there's been change every 90 days, alphanumeric, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, really easy things for people to remember. And that's why CIOs are really well loved among their employees and their associates, because you're the bad guy. You're trying to protect that information. You're trying to protect access to that information. So where does biometrics fall in? Unlike something you have, like your card, something you know, a password, biometrics are you. So a good biometric, and Fujitsu's biometric specifically, Palm Secure, is an internal feature in the body that you never forget to bring to work, and it's not easily compromised. So going forward, forget where you are today. Going forward, where do you want to be? You want to protect that information that's being stored, protect the transmission of that information, but firstly, you would understand who's accessing it. And within the organization or within outside the organization, if you don't know who's gaining access, you're not sure if you're getting the right person, the right access to the right information. And that's where Fujitsu really stands out amongst all the competition in regards to biometrics.
Do you think that's going to increase speed and add convenience? I mean, is that?
Oh, thank you. I apologize. You just beat me to the punch.
No, I mean, I hope it is,
right.
because that's a common complaint. It's
Absolutely.
the more you try to protect something, it's almost like the child safety cap on medicine.
Absolutely.
At some point, you're like, well, even I can't get into this, and I know it's mine.
Well, let me just ask this question here. How many people in the last 30 days have had brain freeze when you had to enter a password? Just yesterday, okay. And is that convenient? Let's be honest. But the CIO needs that. The CIO needs to understand that it's been changed, it's been rotated. It's not the name of your favorite football team. It's got all these different characters. Dilbert Dilbert's one of the great ones, obviously, cartoons, had a thing a few weeks ago where the new password that CIOs dictated is going to be uppercase, lowercase, raccoon noises, and other things. I mean, you're trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, and the bad guys are good, let's face it. So that's where biometrics really fall. Fujitsu's biometric really falls into place, because it's a step ahead, if not more. It's unlike any other biometric technology out there by any of our competitors today. We're the only internal biometric. So what does that mean? That means that I can lift a fingerprint off this table, I can repeat it. I can record my voice, I can repeat it. I can take a picture of my face and iris, I can repeat it. I dare you to take a near-infrared image of the vein pattern of the deoxygenated blood flowing out of my hand and repeat that, because that's what Fujitsu does. So we're one step ahead in that regard, and that's what we're hoping to adopt for the world.
So as a reporter, I can't close out any conversation without asking about what's next, because that's what gets my juices flowing. And I'm just curious, what does innovation look like to each of you guys? What do you think the next 5 years is going to bring in terms of your own solutions, the challenges you're going to face, what your clients are going to bring to you? And look, we don't all have to be right about these. It would have been hard to have predicted 10 years ago that the smartphone would have done what it has done. But it's just, it's fun to think about where are we going next? What's going to be around the corner?
Yeah, it's, I think going back to the earlier theme, it's going to be business driven. And it's hard for us to sit here and start to try and imagine. I love the word innovation, and I also hate the word innovation because I don't actually know what it means. You know, if we were to take a poll and I was, say if I would do some audience participation, what's the best technology innovation in the last 10 years? Anybody?
It'll be the smartphone for me.
Yeah. So when we talk about innovation, most people, 9 out of 10 people that I ask, what's the best innovation in the last 10 years? Most people say the smartphone, which is actually incremental development. It's not true innovation. I mean, what we just heard about the palm print, I think that's innovation. So there's a lot of innovation going on, but inside of business, I think there's a lot of incremental development gone on, and the challenge for us all within business is to really look at how do we work with clients, how do we work with the world, and truly change it. I was fortunate enough 2 or 3 weeks ago to be in Japan and visited our net community, and they showed us a facility where we grow lettuce inside. And so we all actually got to taste it. So it's quite unusual when you actually start to try and taste something that was grown inside, never seen the light of day and what have you. Incredible. So now we're developing technologies, that's true innovation where you can actually grow a product inside, in buildings without going outside. So Fujitsu was there. The last time I was in Japan in December, I visited our facility where we're developing technologies around the data centers. And I saw a data block and an energy block that was cooled in fluid. Now, for somebody that's been around technology for a long time, to see somebody pick up an electric block and immerse it in water and then tell you, go up and put your finger in it and you can put it on your tongue. I'm good. But there's always somebody that will do it. And somebody did, and they were fine. But, you start to think about, again, in innovation of the future, for me, it's going to be business-led. It's going to be something that we're not thinking about right now. Because I think everything we're thinking about right now is truly incremental development for the most. But it's really sitting down and letting the clients run the gamut of what they're looking for and see where those conversation goes. For me, rich conversation with clients is the greatest thing ever. Not going in directly with a solution, but just sitting down and what if? What if? I still maintain that before I die, I'll be walking around with a chip in my hand that's got everything. You just walk up and you scan it. Nobody's going to steal my hand. So it's, to me, I made that prediction in 2000, and I don't think we're far off. My dogs have it. Yeah. But yeah. I think that, there's going to be something incredible for business in the future that I don't think's there, and I think it's going to be a matter of Fujitsu and its clients deciding what it's going to be.
Anything to add there, even if it's near term?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about innovation, okay? I'm not controversial.
You gave him the mic, so.
But within the next 5 years, first, two shifts need to happen. First, chief information security officers have to change their mindset, and they have to think like CFOs, chief financial officers, because there's absolutely need to bridge that gap between the business and IT and between IT and IT security. Yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing, in terms of investment, they have to move away from prevention to detection and remediation. Okay? You can't prevent everything. Okay? Security breaches will happen. It's a matter of detecting them and applying the right remediation. And certainly, guess what? Big data can help. Okay? Because with big data, you are able to monitor in real time all the accesses and so on, including from the zillion of sensors all around that produces a lot of data. Okay? So two shifts in mindset, moving from the Chief Information Security Officer to a CFO mindset, talking business, and certainly moving away from just prevention. That's what I would like to happen in the next few years.
One of the things, just to touch on, much of the things we've seen today, we all know, the older ones of us, have this thing called a BlackBerry device back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
That was innovative. Woohoo, we got a BlackBerry. Put a BlackBerry next to an iPhone today. It's light and day, but that was incremental. So I think in the next few years, another incremental change for CIOs is to your point, think differently. Something that I've been talking about for 15 years, it still hasn't happened. Doorway to desktop. Is the CIO responsible for all the security within the organization? And is it the same form of security that does everything? That's innovative. Throw away your passwords, throw away your cards. The person walks in the door, he's that person. The person sits at a PC to log into your network, he's the same person. Develop a technique to identify that person all the way through the chain process so it's easier for him, more convenient for him, and more secure for the CIO. Today, they're all disparate smokestacks within the organization, all doing their own little thing. Collectively put that together, you'll save money because you've got one solution, not 5 or 10, and you'll save convenience for your user. I think that'll help both.
Gentlemen, it's been fun. Now we're going to open it up to the crowd.
Okay.
Any questions out there for these three gentlemen?
Not really a question, but you're hitting on something really good. We saw the RFID stuff upstairs, right, at the exhibit hall. We saw the Internet of Things discussions, a lot of different research going on the manufacturing work floor at hospitals and schoolrooms, etc. Why isn't that done? Why isn't Fujitsu already accomplished what you just said? I mean, it seems like you've got all the pieces and parts. What the hell is the problem?
Could you recap the question just briefly so we have it for the recording?
Well, I'd love to have him repeat it because he's did it better than I. Do you mind if I just hand the microphone?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Yeah, sure.
I don't want to paraphrase it and mess it up. So.
It's going to hit you.
No.
No, I'm just saying, I saw the RFID stuff upstairs, right? Everybody knows what that is. You attach that to a person, you attach that to a thing, and it tells you where it is and what's going on with it. And so if your prediction is true and if it's where we want to be, and I'm raising my hand first because I think that's a really good idea from the perspective of end user experience, then why hasn't Fujitsu done that? Why haven't we connected the doors to talk to the PCs and say, hey, guess what? John's coming. Turn on his computer or his end computing device and get it started up. There's no sense in him waiting. He's busy. He doesn't have time to jerk around. And by the way, prioritize his email and his messages because he's got to get to work and he needs to do the most important things first. Why hasn't Fujitsu done that?
Yeah, it's a good point. Why, in all the world of connected things, why are humans still disconnected to many things? Yeah.
Well, thank you. You just sort of, I should pay money for that because that was my lead-in. Thank you. So the point is, Fujitsu is, you're right, we're a great technology company with a lot of components. And meeting with the customers, meeting with our clients in advance, and understanding their needs, and understanding their vision of where they want to go, we have a lot of building blocks to achieve just that. Absolutely agree. Now, were they all there 5 years ago? Not necessarily. So we're evolving too, and I think we're there today, to answer your question. I think there's a tipping point, and we're there today. I think we have the RFID tags, as you said. We have the biometrics, as you said. We have the clouds. We have the big data. But we have all those components to help our customers leverage this technology to meet their goals.
Does it boil down to an integration issue? Just making the decision to integrate a lot of disparate things?
I think it is. Integration is always a challenge, but I think the answer is, as well as the integration, it's having that conversation. You know, it's the drive to do that. There's all the technologies in the world, but actually having those innovative conversations, and that's the point I was making earlier. We've got to sit down together, because every solution isn't going to be, you know, the end for every client. You know, so I think for the CIOs of the world, that there's sort of there's two CIOs left. You know, there's the transformational and then there's the run. And I think the transformational CIOs, if you aspire to be in that world, are the ones that are getting out of their office and are truly now becoming business leaders and thinking, as you rightly say, you know, what's the solution that the client really wants, and not telling them and not asking them for, you tell me what you want and I'll just deliver it. It truly is having that conversation.
Yeah, the bottom line is we all have a vehicle.
Yeah.
We all have legs. We all move. We all have hands.
Yeah.
We all have a door that we have to go through. We all have a PC or an endpoint of some sort.
Yeah.
Those things are not different.
Yeah.
It's just our personalities that are different in our skill sets. So it seems like what you described as a vision for the future is right there.
So my question to add on to that is, are you getting this same thing from clients? And if you are, does it come down to a cost issue? Because to be fair, you could connect all of those things right now, but done across a massive organization, it won't come without cost. So are those conversations ongoing, weighing cost benefit?
There's always a cost, but I think we've got to become the digital disruptors. You know, we've got to be the ones that are driving this digital world and getting out there and being the disruptive force. It's one of our missions. It is the rallying cry today. We are going to be this digital and disruptor of industry and technology. We see it. Our clients are desperate for it. We actually want it. As individuals, the new workforce is driving it. You know, the new workforce doesn't want to come in and sit at a desk with a desk phone. I've not used I've not used a desk phone in probably 4 years. You know, it's not something that we use anymore, but it's still sat there. You know, so I think it's a great question. There isn't a great answer as to why we haven't done it. It's what we have to do. The vision's there. The products are there. We've now got to drive it and become that disruptive factor and change the mindset of the CIO and the business. And we've got to get out of the CIO office and into the CXO suite and have that, is this relevant to the business? You know, because the technologies are right there for us.
just maybe a point. You know, Fujitsu is a service and product company. Okay. True, we try to disrupt the industry and we bring innovation to clients and we inform them of new relevant technology that's available and so on. However, clients, they care first about their customers. Okay? And that's why we have introduced that new technology for their customers. When I was talking about those ATM with palm vein technology, when I was talking about some work that we do in the health sector with self-checking kiosk for patients, it brings that new technology, but it brings the technology to the clients of our clients because it's what our clients are asking first.
Yeah. You just beat me to the punch. So back to that point. So we've got these great pieces. We meet with a hospital in Houston, Texas, and that hospital in Houston, Texas has a problem. One of the problems is 2,000 other patients have the exact same name. So when you come into a hospital, you identify yourself first with my name. Of those patients, many of them share the exact same birth date. So the hospital says, we've got a problem. We've got 2,000 Maria Gonzalez's. And some of those Maria Gonzalez's have overlapping names. How do I define this Maria Gonzalez from that Gonzalez? We have the core technology, but they aren't looking for a doorway to desktop. They have a problem with identifying Maria Gonzalez. So that's where Palm Secure is being used in the hospitals today. 20 million patients are identified today on a daily basis with palm vein technology to identify patients on check-in. And that's the short-term CIO's problem. He's got to worry about administering the right care to the right patient today, because that's a lawsuit if he doesn't. So that's his short-term goal. Long-term, we're looking ahead and want to meet in a collaborative basis with the CIOs to talk about where they can go. But our tools we have today, that toolbox we have, works today and can work in the future. So I think you're right.
Any other questions from the crowd? I'm going to run the mic down to him. Ah, Neil.
It's your turn. You're next, Philippe.
Thank you, Neil.
So we're seeing a lot of things at the conference here about customer-facing devices being done, because that's the thing people want to see, right? And it's sort of the glitz and glamour. And what we're talking here in this room is about one of the sort of not so pretty things, right? It's kind of an ugly thing because we're talking about trying to protect stuff and it's not very fancy and it's not glamorous. So my question is, with all the concentration that we're putting on creating the glitz, right, including things like MedArc and stuff, do we have a coordinated effort going on in this ugly realm to maybe do some of the things like move from prevention to detection and remediation and complement all of this complex technology that we're talking about, in which we've all admitted there's only one value to it, and that's data collection and analytics. In the end, it's meaningless unless the data is put someplace for use to change the business, change the experience, right? So in the end, we're putting together all this stuff to collect this information. Are we focusing as hard on protecting it and detecting? I was just curious.
I think the answer is definitely yes. We are, so there's two ways I can look at this. There's the process way, and there's the technology way. So as a company, and most companies are now creating the CISO, the CISO type role. But again, that's not new, but it's changing its focus. I think there's a new wave for me, which is the Chief Digital Officer. And I think that's going to be something that we see a lot in the future, is that somebody who's just truly concentrating on the information and what we keep and what we don't keep. Because I think the ugly, for me today, is that we keep too much data. We absolutely are putting ourselves at risk. And everybody will tell you, but storage is cheap. Well, it is. But we're also creating an issue within the security side. So the ugly, we're helping to create that, where I think with the business we need to sit down and start looking at, do we really need all this information? If it's not used, I go back 20 years. You kept information on paper for 10 years or 7 years or 5 years, whatever the regulatory requirement was, and then you shredded it or burned it. And it was safe because it was gone. Today we don't do that. So, you know, I think we're making a bigger problem for ourselves, and we're now trying to solve it with new technologies. And I think there's a whole shift in thinking, you know. So the CISO is one part. I think the cloud solutions are the others, you know, and the security we put around the cloud. And again, I go back to that, one of my first comments, that the speed and the relevance of the data that you're going to grab and use is going to be critical. And I don't think we've finished yet. I mean, there's the chip today that moves information using light, no copper on the chip. So it actually moves data the speed of your brain. That's been on the shelf for 6 years. Nobody knows how to use it because the algorithm that you need to run at the speed is incredible. But we're getting smarter. You know, the data scientists, the chief digital officers, I think are becoming more and more relevant in business. And that's a path that we're going down. And we've got 1,000 data scientists sat together inside of Fujitsu looking at where we attack this exact issue. So are we addressing it today? Yes. Do we know the answer and where it's going to be in the future? I don't think we do right now, but we've got the data scientists that are really creating those algorithms that are going to attack it. So I think it's going to be an exciting 5 years. And we're all challenged. It's not this is not a CIO challenge. This is a business challenge. You know, but the CIO's got to be in the conversation and got to drive that conversation, not with solutions, but with the thinking, would be the way I would answer your question.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a business challenge, and I also think it's a differentiator.
Yes.
Everybody's talking about how they're going to put you closer to their clients,
Yeah.
right? How we're going to help customers get closer to their clients. But you don't always hear a lot about, okay, and not only will we do that, but we've got an entire strategy and plan for how we're going to do that in an impenetrable way, or at the very least, the most powerful way to keep your stuff safe, right? And I just, you know, I think it's a good complementary story when you bring both together.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for everyone coming out and tuning in online, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you all.